Begin the current Daf Mesech the Sotah Daf Yud. We begin 5 lines down at the top of the Amud, where we continue with the discussion of Shimshon Hagibur, because we mentioned in the previous Mishnah different personalities. Continuing this theme of Mesech the Sotah, which we said Mida Keneged Mida, the way the Sotah acted, that's exactly how she gets punished. So therefore, we mentioned other biblical personalities that also they were punished for exactly the same type of the part of the body that they strayed after. That is where they got punished. And Shimshon HaGibur strayed after his eyes, and therefore the famous story where his eyes were gouged out by the Philistines. And then the Gemara continues discussing some of the characteristics of Shimshon HaGibur. Today's Daf. So let's discuss in today's Daf, like we said, we can discuss the characteristics of Shimshon. 5 people should never make in dugma shalamala, that they were so incredibly osig. They stood out with the certain characteristics, like more of a heavenly type. The characteristics of Yehuda regarding that of Moshe and the davening for him, Avram Avinu comes up in the discussion also, and Avshalom, the son of David HaMelech, regarding his sin and his punishment. So we begin the current Daf Yud, 5 lines down at the top of the Amud. The Gemara quotes a pasuk. V'yikra Shimshon al Hashem b'yomer. Shimshon called out to Hashem, and he said, Hashem Lekim, Hashem, God, Zachreini na. They have songs like this, but Zachreini na, remember me, v'chaskeni na, and strengthen me, achapam hazeh, just this one time. V'nokma nokem achas, and I'll take one revenge, mishtei einai, from my 2 eyes, mipalishtim, from the Philistines. Meaning to say, the reward of one of my eyes, give me in this revenge, and the reward of the other eye that was popped out, that should be for Yom Haba, for the world to come. Now, Amar Rav says that Shimshon said Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbeinu Shalom asked the world, Zechar li esrim shana, recall for me the 20 years Sheshafatati, as he saw that I judged the Jewish people. V'lo imarti lechavim, I didn't tell one of them, Haver li makam, take my shtekin from one place to another place. Which Mashar explains, what does it have to do with the previous pasuk, with the reward of his eyes? Because sheichad, bribery, is ma'aver, blinds a person. So he was saying, I never took a bribe, I never let anyone help the Rebbe goes by himself, didn't even say, take my shtekin, and therefore, he wanted to have a reward for that his eyes, that he should be able to take revenge on the Philistines. Now the pasuk continues and discusses the characteristics and the story of Shimshon. It says, V'yelech Shimshon, this was earlier on, Shimshon went, V'yelakid shalosh me'ez shu'alim, and he trapped 300 foxen. It says, why specifically foxen? So Amr Rabbi Iver by Nagdi, Amr Rabbi Chia bar Abba, Amr Shimshon, he was trying to send, it was like a metaphorical. Shimshon was saying, Yovoi misha chayz la'chayrav, let the fox come, that when they trap him, he doesn't try to run away. Rather, he tries to take stepwards backwards. So let the fox come along. As we had said on the top of this Amud from the previous Daf, that the Philistines had backed out of the oath that Abimelech had, the king of the Philistines, had taken with Avram Avinu. So therefore, they was hinting to that by punishing them by capturing all these foxen and causing them damage. He said, "Benki Seif of Shal Shimshon." Between the shoulders of Shimshon, Shishim Amahaya was a distance of 60 amas. That's pretty wide shoulders. Somebody says in the pasuk, "V'yishkav Shimshon ad chatzi alayla." Shimshon laid down until midnight. V'yokem chatzi alayla, he got up by midnight. V'yechaz badalsa shara heir, and he grabbed a hold of the doors of the gate of the city, which was referring to the city of Azza. Ubeshtem mezuzah, and the 2 doorposts. V'yisoyim emabrich, and he carried them out with the crossbar. V'yos maksif, and he put it on his shoulders, meaning like the measurement of his shoulders. The Gemiri tradition, the Ein Dal says Azza, that the doors of Azza are not pchusis mishishim amma, less than 60 amma. So you see, that's how wide his shoulders were. So let's say around 120 feet was the length of his shoulders. Now the pasuk says, "Vahi teichem neves hasurim." At one point he was in jail, and he was grinding in the jail. So Rabbi Yochanan says, "Ein tchina el lashon avera." The grinding is a terminology of sin. Like it says a pasuk in Iyov. The pasuk says, "Titchin la'acher," she will grind to another, "Ishti, my wife," which as the pasuk there ends, "V'aleo yichron acherin," and on her others will kneel, meaning it's a euphemism for intimacy. So we see that his wife is going to stray after someone else. So it refers to the sin of seed. which Malamed comes to teach us. What do you mean? He was sinning. He was grinding in jail. The teacher should call echad ve'echad. Every single person brought his wife to jail, so that she should become impregnated from Shimshon. Again, that DNA of Shimshon Agiber, they all wanted the wives to become pregnant from him, as we had said in the previous daf, that he was blessed in his seed, that his seed flowed on the top of the summit, kenachal shaitiv. He had incredible potency. Now, Amar Papi says, this is what people say, that in front of a person, you always bring him what he is accustomed to. Someone who's, you bring a cup of wine, someone who drinks wine, you bring chamra, you bring wine. Someone who works the ground and he digs in the gardens that usually eats vegetables, so gridaya duvla. So you bring him a basket full of vegetables, which duvla is a type of vegetables. So here also, Shimshon was very attached to this idea about cohabitation. So when he's in jail, that's what they brought him, all these women, to be intimate with. Now, a pasuk we had mentioned just before, so Rabbi Yochanan says a related teaching. It says, Kala mazana, whoever acts illicitly in his marriage, ishta mizanen is love. His wife is mazana also in the relationship. Shlomo says the pasuk in Eiv, Im nifta libi al isha, if my heart is seduced on a woman, and by the opening of my friend is where I lay in ambush, meaning this guy's going to hit the neighbor's wife to go ahead and have an extramarital relationship. What does the pasuk say afterwards? The pasuk we mentioned before. My wife is grinding for another man, and that others are kneeling on her. This is what people say that don't think this is not a match made in heaven. So he's busy with pumpkins. And the wife is busy with gourds, meaning they're all the same species. It's just that one's bigger, one's smaller. In other words, what he's busy with, she's also busy with. So don't think that he's being mizan and she's not going off somewhere else to the other hotel to someone else. Another teaching from Rabbi Yochanan, continuing with Shimshon. So Shimshon dones Yisrael kavim shebashamayim. Shimshon judged the Jewish people like their father in heaven. Shem, like it says a pasuk in Bereshis. This is by the Birchas Yaakov. Don yoded amay. Don will judge his people. Ka'achad v'goymer. Now, the simple understanding of the pasuk is like one of the Shifti Yisrael, but you could read it as ka'achad, as the one who is the singular of the world who judges with righteousness, referring to Hashem, who is Hashem is echad. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, he says Shimshon. The word Shimshon is al Shmei Hakadosh Baruch Hu. He was called on the name of God. Why? Because Shenemar, it says a pasuk in Tehillim, Ki Shemesh. Although generally Shemesh is usually translated as sun, but like Rashi says, it also could mean a terminology of a wall. Like a pasuk in Shai says, V'samti kadka chimshei sayich, which is a terminology as a barrier, as a wall, is Hashem is a wall, umagin, and a shield, Hashem likim v'goymer. So you see that Hashem is a Shemesh. So Shimshon is called on God's name. So the Gemara says, wait a second, if that's the case, lo yimacha. So then you shouldn't be able to erase the name Shimshon, because it sounds like that literally that his name was like a nickname of Hashem's name. So Ella Brother says, Gemara, no, it's not al Shmoi Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's Me'ein Shmoi Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's not that the word Shemesh is literally God's name. It's just that God protects and He saves, so therefore the name Shimshon, which is the word Shemesh, alludes to this characteristic. Because Ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu Megin HaKolam Kula, just like God protects in the whole world, Av Shimshon Megin B'derei Al Yisrael. So to Shimshon protect in his generation over the Jewish people. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, another related teaching, he says, Bilam was lame in one foot. Shem, like it says a pasuk in Bamidbar, it says Vayelech Shefi. Now, Shefi could mean like going slow, but like Rashi says, like the Gemara Chulun of Membeis, Shaf Meduchti means it got pulled out from its place. It means like when a person is lame, that it's out of its socket, and therefore he's lame. Now that's in the singular, so he was lame in one foot. Shimshon was lame in both feet. Because Shemit says the pasuk in Bereshis, again there by the Birchas Yaakov and Sheva Dan, it says Shvifon Ali Oirach, that he's going to be slithering on the ground, but Shvifon is not Shefi, it's like a double terminology, two phases over there, means to say he was lame in both feet. I thought I'd learn the Brisa, and continue on this theme of our Mishnah, where we had these incredible individuals who stumbled and were punished with that part of what they were. So similarly, there were 5 that were created with like a similar, like a microcosm of what's up above in Shemai. Meaning, like Rashi explained, they were changed from those here down here on this world for great splendor. V'kulam lacham b'hem, and they were all punished with that supernatural element that they had, which, as Rashi says, the Gemara is not going to bring proof that they were blessed with these things, but it's going to bring proof that they were punished in these things. So, who are these 5 individuals? So you have Shimshon b'koichai. Shimshon had supernatural strength with which was lost when his hair was cut. Shaul b'tzavarei. Shaul, it says a pasuk in Shmuel Aleph, the Yigba Mikolom Meshichmo Lamalo, that he was from shoulders and up, which was the beauty of his neck was incredibly blessed, and again, as we'll see, he was punished on that part of his body. Avshalom b'sa'arei, Avshalom with his incredible hair, Tzidkiya be'ein of Tzidkiya with his eyes, Asa b'raglov, and Asa with his feet, that he was extraordinarily swift. And again, they were all punished with these supernatural parts of themselves. As the Gemara says, Shimshon b'koichad, the Chsiblik, it said the pasuk in Shoftim, that when his hair was cut, v'yosar koicha me'olav, that his strength was removed from him. So what he was incredibly blessed with, he ultimately was punished with. Shaul b'tzavarei, Shaul with his neck. The Chsiblik says the pasuk in Shmuel Aleph, it says, v'yikach Shaul esacherev v'yipol oleha. Shaul took the sword and he fell on it. Meaning, where's the place that a sword usually kills a person? Is where they get beheaded, which is the neck, and that's because that was where he was blessed from his shoulders and up, which is where the neck area is. Avshalom b'sarei. Avshalom had incredibly beautiful hair, and he was punished with the hair. Like we're going to see later on what happened to him. Tzidke be'einav, Tzidke with his eyes, his extraordinary vision. The Chsiblik says the pasuk Malachim Beis, v'es'eni Tzidkiyo, either that the eyes of Tzidkiyo were blinded. Which Rashi says, we don't know from where do you know that he was changed for the incredible blessings, and so to Asa with his feet, but that's what he heard from his teacher, and we find that they were punished at least in those areas. And Asa b'raglav, Asa in his feet, just like it says the pasuk Malachim Aleph, it says Rak le'izik nasei, but just when he got older, chales raglav, his feet became ill, and what was that? So the Gemara says, V'amar b'dmarav, shachazasei padagra, which Rashi says is a type of illness which grabs a hold of the feet, which some say that's gout. So that's what he got when he was older, and he was punished with what was his incredible power. It says, what is this padagra? So it says, it's like needles in living flesh. It says, how did Reb Nachman know what this gout is, what this padagra is? So those that say, he actually suffered from it, and therefore he knew what it was. Some say Mirab Shamali, he heard it from his teacher. Third pshat, like the pasuk says, Soid Hashem lireyav, the secret of God is to those who fear him, uvrisa leidiyam, and his covenant to let them know. Meaning, Hashem gives divine inspiration for those to know exactly what stuff are in the science world. Now, Dash Rav expounded, Asa. Why was Asa, this last one that we mentioned, punished with his feet, that to become sick? Because he made a conscription. He drafted for the service of the king. Milcham are supposed to sit and learn, and he drafted them to fight. Like it says, the pasuk Malachim Beis, Malachim Aleph. It says, "Melech Asa, King Asa, Hishmi as Kol Yehuda." He let all of Judea hear, meaning he screamed out that they should pick up those stones, which there was a fight between the Melech Yisrael, which are the 10 tribes, and Melech Yehuda, which was him, which he was building to go ahead and not let people come to Asa Melech Yehuda. So he says, "Ein naki, no one's clean, no one's free from this. Everyone has to come and help out." My ein naki, what does it mean ein naki? So he says, "Afilu chasen mechedrei." Even the groom from his room, but kal mechapasen, their bride from the chuppah, which as Rashi explains, because by them it says naki yila beisei begaimer. It says that they should be clean, they should be free for a year, and no one's supposed to bother them. They're not supposed to do any fighting, any wars. So as some Gemaras bring on the side from the Aruch, that and if he was taking even a chas and a kala, they're not supposed to fight anything. They're supposed to stay for a year and just spend time together. And for Shot HaMachacham, and therefore that's why he was punished, because he conscripted them to fight. That's why he became sick with his feet. Now, Ksiv, it says a pasuk that we mentioned before on the previous daf in Sefer Shoftim, when it talks about Shimshon HaGiber. So it says that V'yerid Shimshon Timnasa, that Shimshon went down to Timnah. Obviously, Timnas is in a decline; it's lower down. Now, the Ksiv, however, is a pasuk in Bereshis that says by Yehuda and Tamar. It says Hinei Chamecha Oyla Timnasa, that she was told that her father-in-law Yehuda went up to Timnah. Obviously, it's an elevation, because as Rashi explained, Shimshon and Yehuda were both in Eretz Yisrael. So do you have to go up to get there, or do you go down to get there? So Rabbi Lazar says, it depends. Shimshon is Ganaba, Shimshon that was degraded, meaning he married from the Philistine girls that were forbidden to him. It says the terminology of going down. For him, it was a descent. Again, not literally a descent, a physical descent, but it was a spiritual descent. Yehuda Shenes Alaba, Yehuda that was elevated because from there was where Peretz and Zerach were born, from there was a dynasty of kings and prophets of the Jewish people. Ksiv Ba'aliyah, so it says over there an elevation. Again, doesn't really say where it was. It's just it's relevant to or relative to the spiritual status. But however, another interpretation from Shmuel ben Nachmaniam says no. Actually, shtei timnois hayu. There actually were two timnois. Yeah, one you have to go down for, one you have to go up for. So it's two different places. Third interpretation of Papa, he says, no, Chad Timna Have. It's one Timna, but it was in the middle of a slope of a mountain. The Asima Haigisa, if you're coming from the top of the mountain, you read this going down. The Asima Haigisa, if you're coming from the other side, from this bottom of the mountain, Sali, it's going up. Could go in Vardonia, Ubibari, Beshuka Denerash. These are cities which are in the slope of a mountain, so it's not a contradiction. Depends. If you're coming from the bottom, if you're coming from the top, it's going to be either going up or going down. Now, related discussion regarding what we mentioned now with Yehuda and Tamar. So the pasuk says in Bereshis, "Vatishav bePesach einayim," that she sat, this Tamar, by the opening of the eyes. That's a simple translation, which generally translates as the crossroads. What does it mean that that's where she was waiting for Yehuda to be mizana with him? Someone like Sandori says, "Malamed, this comes to teach shaholchu v'yashvu lo bePesach shel Avram Avinu." She actually went and she sat by the opening of where the tent of Avram Avinu was. Why is that called Pesach Einayim? So Pesach is the opening. Why Einayim? Because Makim Shekol Einayim Tzayfis L'Reisa. It's a place where all eyes are looking towards to see. Because Avram Avinu used to accept people over there, and people come to sleep over there. It was a very dear place, so everyone would look over there. Therefore, that's Pesach Einayim. That's where she sat to go ahead and engage with Yehuda. Now, Rav Chana Amar Rav, he says no, a different interpretation. It's Makim Hu Sheshmo Einayim. It's a place which is called Einayim. That's Pesach Einayim, by the opening of the city of Einayim. Like it says the pasuk in Yeshua. It says Tafuach va'Einam. One of the places mentioned over there is Einam. That's the name of the place where Tamar was. Now, another interpretation, Shmuel ben Nachmaniam, it says no. Shenosna Einayim lidvoreha. She gave eyes, so to speak, to her words. Kishetava, when he was petitioning her. Meaning, like Rashi explains, like a Pesach. That's why it says Pesach Einayim. Of Heter, she gave to herself where there was no sin for her to be intimate with Yehuda. Why? Because they had the following conversation. Amalah, Yehuda says to this woman who he didn't know was Tamar, so Shema Nachasad, maybe you're a non-Jewish. Amalei, no, I'm a convert to Judaism, meaning I'm not an idol worshiper and I'm fit for you. He says, Shema Isha, maybe you're a married woman. Amalei Penuya, and she says, no, I'm a single woman, I'm permitted to every single person. So he said, Shema Kibabach Avach Kedushin. Maybe your father already accepted the Kedushin on you. Amalei, no, Yisleimani, I'm an orphan. And additionally, as Rashi explains, what do you mean? She was married to Yehuda's sons. No, so she says, I was a minor, and my mother and my brothers married me off, and therefore the marriage she had to Aaron Oinu, which was Yehuda's sons, were insignificant to make her forbidden on him because of being his daughter-in-law. And because there's no rights to the mother and the brothers to marry off the minor, only the father has rights. Like the pasuk says, beating this says only the father has rights. Rashi just points out, according to this svara, that means to say that Tamar was not the daughter of Shem, which is brought elsewhere in Bereshis Rabbah that she was the daughter of Shem, because when Yaakov was 50 years old, so Shem had already passed away. Now Yaakov was already more than 110 years at that point, and therefore it can't be that she was Yisema, a minor from and being a daughter of Shem. So that just points out that wouldn't be like that medrash. But then he says, maybe you were Tameh. Amalei, she says, no, Teirani, meaning I'm not a Nida, and therefore he was asking all these questions. That's Pesach Einayim, which is, again, she was just giving Einayim, she was giving answers to Yehuda's questions when he was asking all these things, and she said, no, I'm Giyeris, I'm single, I'm Yisayma, I'm Tahira, and therefore I'm permitted to you, and therefore that's where the Davidic dynasty came from, which, again, we just introduced because we were discussing Timnasa, if that's going down or going up, because we discussed that with Shimshon and then brought into that discussion. Now, once we got into that discussion about that one of the pshatim was that she was by Oil Avraham, which is Pesach Einayim, because that's where everyone looks towards, so we discussed now the Oil Avraham. So it's like a Geshmak discussion. You go from one to the next. It says the pasuk, Vayita Ishel be'Be'er Shava, that Avraham Avinu planted an Eshel in Be'er Sheva. So what's Eshel? So Amar Reish Lakish Malamed Sha'asa Pardes comes to teach that he made an orchard, v'nata by komin megadim, and he planted all types of delicious delicacies to give pleasure to passerbys who come by where he is. Now there's a machlokes exactly what this means. Chadam Pardes, one says literally made an orchard. Chadam Pundik, he says no, actually he had a kreichme, he had a motel, inn where the guests could sleep, and that's what Rashi says. Eshel is an acronym for Achila, Shtia, and Lavoya, because he would give them to eat, give them to drink, and then he would escort them out. So that's the two different interpretations. So the Gemara says, wait a second. According to one that says there was the orchard, that says that he planted. Of course you plant an orchard, it's planting these trees. According to one that says that it was a hotel, you don't plant a hotel, you got to build a hotel. Says the Gemara, no, like it says the pasuk, actually in Daniel, which is regarding one of the kings, it says, V'yita a holy apad. He planted the tents of his mansion. Yeah, so there is appropriate to say a terminology of planting on a building. Now, at the end of the pasuk that we mentioned before, by Avram Avinu, so he planted an Eshel in Beersheba, and it says, V'yikra sham b'shem Hashem keil olam, that he called over there in the name of God, the God of the world. Now, Amar Shlokish says, Atikra v'yikra. Don't read that he called out, but as we continue to Beis, rather, Ella vayakri, that he made call out. Meaning he taught the people to call out in the name of Hashem Keil Olam. What does this mean? So the famous teaching, Malamas comes to teach Hikri Avram Avinu, that Avram Avinu caused it to be called out, L'shmoy HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the name of God, B'peh kolei v'shav. In every passerby, he caused Hashem's name to be called out. Kitzad, how so? How do you get people to make a bracha? How is he the master of the Kiruv movement? You offer food. After they didn't drink from his own, they got to bless Avram Avinu. And Amalem, he said to them, you think I'm eating from my own food? From the God of the world you're eating. So they gave thanks and they praised and they blessed for the one who said and made the world, and that's how he caused God's name to be called out. Now, going back to Yehuda and Tamar, so it says Vayireho Yehuda. So Yehuda saw this woman. He thought that she was a zayna because she covered her face. Says the Gemara, what? Because she covered her face, so he thought that she was a zayna. Well, why would a zayna be covering her face? So no, Leslie says no. Because she covered her face in the father-in-law's household, meaning he never ever saw all his life that when his daughter-in-law was in his house, he never saw her face. She was very modest, very discreet, and therefore he didn't recognize her. And that's why he thought she was a zayna, meaning because he didn't realize it was his own daughter-in-law. The Bach brings a different girsa that actually, what it means to say is that even though he thought it was Tamar, he made a mistake to say it's another woman because she was so modest in his house. Like, this can't be Tamar. This doesn't look like the same, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Who is this? She looks like her, but it can't be her. Again, different interpretation would have to be a little different girsa. But the Amr B'Shmuel B'Nachmein says, Kol Kalish Itznu B'Veis Chamel, any daughter-in-law that's very modest and discreet in her father-in-law's household, merits and comes out of her kings and prophets. Not only Tamar, like we just said, that she was discreet, and therefore she merited actually to have children from Yehuda. Like Nevi'im, the prophet, like it says in Yeshaya, it says Chazon Yeshayahu ben Amoitz, that Yeshayahu, the son of Amoitz, that he saw, which that's the Davidic dynasty, and Malachim David. Malachim is from David, because V'amar Rab Levi says David is a Messiah's b'yedin ma'abesein. This is a tradition in our hands that we have from our fathers. Amoitz, who is the father of Yeshayahu, who we just said was a prophet, V'Amatzia, who is a Judaic king, a Melech Yehuda from the Davidic dynasty, Achim Hava, they were brothers. And Amatzia, we know, is from the Davidic dynasty, because it goes through the Malchi Yehuda. And Amatz's brother was a prophet, as we say, whenever you say a prophet and his father, the father is also a prophet. So obviously, Nevi'im came out of Tamar, and also Malachim came out. Now, in that story, they found out that she was pregnant, Tamar. So it says that he mutzes, that she was being taken out to be burnt because Yehuda Paskin, it says she was a Shemeres Yavam, and here she's pregnant from must have been she was Mizana, taken out to be burnt. So it says the Gemara, he musates mi baile. It should have said that she was being taken out. That would have sounded like she's being forcibly taken out. He mutzes, says Rashi, it sounds like a terminology of a metzia, that she's found. Why does it say himutzeis, not himuseitz? So Rabbi Elazar says la'achar shenimtzu simaneha, that after his simanim were found, meaning she had, as the story went in the Torah, she had his seal, she had his shirt, and she had his staff, his stick. So what happened is Bo Sama'al, the Samach Mem, the angel of Edom, of the enemy of the Jewish people, he came, V'richkan, and he distanced it, he tried to push away those signs so that Tamar should get burnt, and David HaMelech should not come out from her, who he's the ultimate enemy, and he destroys Edom in Gei Melech. So Bo Gavriel V'kirvan, so Gavriel, the Malach, came along and he brought it closer. That's Himutzeis, which was being found. It's referring to the Simanim, which were, so to speak, being lost, and the Gavriel came and brought it back. And Heinrich said that's what it means the pasuk in Tehillim. Lam natseach al yoines elam, on the silent dove. Elam is like a mute dove. Rechaikim, that are far away, but like Rashi explains, because of the subject of being distant, which the Simanim were distant, leDavid michtam, for that which was fit to come out from that which is going to be David, is what this is referring to. Amar B'Yichan, and he says, Misha shenisrachku simaneha, because the moment her simanim were distant, nasas kiyoni lemes, she became like a mute, a silent dove. That's what it says. Lamanech al yonis elam, leDavid michtam sheyatzu mena David, because that's what it was. Because the Malach, the Samach Mem, was pushing it away, because out from her is going to come David. Shahoyim, that what's michtem? What's a David michtem? The word michtem is a compound word. Shahoyim mach, that he was poor, meaning like Rashi is like an anav, which is the root is ani, which is a humble person. Vitam, and complete. He was tam and bedrachav. Lakol, for everything. That's what it means. Lamatzech al yoines elam. She became like a silent dove, because the Simanim were distant, which is the David Michtam, because of David that's going to come out, that's Mach and Tam. Another pshat why this refers to David is actually because Mechtam is Shahisim Makasei Tama, that actually his Makkah, which is referring to the wound that happens to a baby, was complete, meaning Shenoli Kishumol, he was actually born circumcised. So the Makkah Mamila, which is fit to have a Makkah, was already complete, which he didn't have to diminish it when he was born. Or Tavacha, another pshat is Mechtam is Kshem Shebekat Nusa, just like when he was small before he became king. Hiktin Atzma Eitzel Mishagad Menu Luma Torah, he made himself small by who was greater from him to learn Torah from him. So Kach Begadlusa is so too in his greatness after he was king. The Bach adds on the words Hiktin Atzma Eitzel Mishagad Menu Luma Torah. He still made himself small by someone that was greater from him to go ahead and learn Torah. That's what the word Mechtam is. That his makkah was tama from the beginning to the end, meaning his mach, which was his anivis, was tam, was complete, meaning he was always humble from the beginning, even when he was small, to the end, even when he became great, when he became the king. Now the pasuk there, continuing with Tamar and Yehuda, it says, "V'hisholcha el chameha lemer," that she sent to her father-in-law saying, "Leish asher eila," to the man who these signs belong to, "Lo yonechi hara," it's to him that I am pregnant to. Now she didn't send him straight directly and say, "Hey, I'm pregnant from you, and these are your simanim." She didn't say that. Says the Gemara, why? But Temalei Meimer. Why doesn't she tell the agent to tell Yehuda that from him I'm pregnant, and these are his simanim? So the well-known teaching, some say it was Rav Chanah, some say it was Rabbi Yochanan. It's easier for a person, it would be more convenient for a person to throw himself into a fiery furnace and not whiten the face of someone else in public. Where do we know this from? We know this from Mitamar, because here also it was easier for her to burn herself in the fire and not embarrass him, and therefore she sent him. If he's going to admit and reveal it, let him reveal it. If not, she's going to get burnt, and she's not going to reveal the secret. Now, in her words, she said, "Hakarna, please recognize." So Amar B'Chamar B'Chanina, because Bahakar Bisula Aviv, since Yehuda went and pained his father when he said over the news about Yosef, he used the word Hakir. So Bahakar Bisru, so he was also notified with his shame, also with the word of Hakir, as the Gemara explains. Bahakar Biser, he let his father know with the word Hakir. He said, "Hakir nak senis bintchahi," Says, do you recognize, is this the kisainis, is this the tunic of your son of Yosef, which was, they had ripped it and they had blood on it? So Bahakar B'Stru, so they also let him know his shame in the word Hakar. She said, Hakar no, let me please recognize whose signs these are. Now, she also used the word no. What's please? Eina Elisha Bakasha. It's a request. Amaleshi said to him, B'Bakashim, I beg of you, Hakar P'nei Barecha, recognize the face of your Creator, V'Altalam Enecha Mimene, and don't go ahead and turn your eyes away from me. Please admit that I'm pregnant from you. So the pasuk says, "Vayakar Yehuda recognize." And he says, "Sadka mimeni." So there's many different ways how to translate it, but yeah, she's righteous. It's from me, or she's more righteous than me. Hainu the Amr of Chanan bar Bizna of Shimon Chasida. Yosef shekiddushim shemayim b'seiser. Yosef sanctified God's name in private, which we know the story with Yosef and Eshes Peitifar. There was no one else around, but he sanctified God's name in private. So he merited that they add on one letter of God's name. Says the pasuk in Tehillim, we say in the Shir Shel Yom, Eidus b'Yosef Shemayim. Testimony in Yosef was his name. His name was Yosef, but a hey was added on, which is one of the letters of God's name. Yehuda that sanctified God's name out in open in public. Though everyone's waiting over there, they're going to burn this woman, and he gets up and he says, Rabbi Sai, it's me. He merits, and all of God's name is called on his name because the word Yehuda is Yod Kei Vav Kei, just with a Daled. And that's the ultimate existence when someone could do something like that. Now, once he admitted and he says, she's right, it's from me, heavenly voice came out and said, you saved Tamar and her two sons, which she was pregnant with, from the fire. By your life, that I'm going to save in your merit, or three of your sons from the fire. And Maninu, who are these three sons? Hananya, Mishal, Bazari, like we know the famous story that they were in the fire and they were saved. Now, he said, Tzadka, she's right, mimeni, it's from me. Says Yamam, no yada. How did he know that she's pregnant from him? Maybe she was a Zaina, and maybe she had, who knows, 100 other people. He didn't have a DNA testing or paternity. How do you know the paternity? Says the Gemara, Yotza Baskava Amra, it was a heavenly voice that came and said, Mimeni. Tzadka, she's right. Mimeni, it's from me, meaning the Yotzu Kavushim, that the secrets have come out, these hidden things, meaning it was decreed in front of me that from this woman, Tamar, shall come out kings. And it's only possible to come out from Yehuda, like it says in Bereshis Memtes, Gur Arya Yehuda, the lion, the cub is Yehuda, that's the sign of Malucha. So it was actually the Baskal. You're right, Yehuda wouldn't know. But the Baskal was saying that, that it's from me that this thing happened. Now the pasuk says, "V'lo Yosef oid ladata." So what is lo Yosef? He wasn't Yosef more to know her, meaning his daughter-in-law Tamar, who is now the woman that he had impregnated, says that he wasn't any more Yosef more to know her, to be intimate with her. So Amr Shmuel Saba, who is Chamud Rav Shmuel Bar Ami, the father-in-law of Rav Shmuel Bar Ami, he said of Mishmeid Rav Shmuel Bar Ami that Kivin Sheyadam, once he knew that she's a righteous woman and her intention was L'Shem Shemaim, so Shuvloi Pasik Man actually never stopped being intimate with her. Because Ksivach, it says, Lo Yosef Ladata. Now, Lo Yosef means, the way we're going to translate it is, that he didn't stop. Because Ksiv, like Hasam, it says over there in Devarim, that Kol Godav Lo Yosef, that when the Hashem's voice, by Matan Torah, was a great voice, Lo Yosef, it means it didn't stop. And therefore also that once he realized that she was righteous, he never stopped being intimate with her. Now we had said that in the Mishnah, Avshalom, the next personality, we spoke about Shimshon HaGibor, Avshalom, this God, Besarei B'chulu, he was arrogant with his hair, and therefore he was punished. He was, as the Mishnah said, Nitle Besarei, he was hung from his hair. So tomorrow we'll learn the Bryce that elaborates and says, Avshalom Besarei Moran. Avshalom rebelled with his hair. Shlomo says a pasuk in Shmuel Beis. It says, "Kavshalom lo hoye ish yafa v'guma v'gaimer." Like Avshalom, there wasn't any such beautiful person, etc. Ubegalcha is reishu, when he was shave his hair, but he mekates yam liyamim, that it was at the end of a year period, ashigalech, that he would cut his hair because he was what's called a nazir oilam, as we learned in the previous Masechta. He cuts his hair once every 12 months. Ki chavod alav v'gilcha, because it was heavy on him his hair, and therefore he would cut off his hair. V'shakal esar reishai, and he would weigh the hair of his head, Masayim shkalim be'evan hamelech, 200 shkalim in the king's stones. Meaning, tell me in the Braisa, that's the Evan, the stone, she'anshi teferiv, anshi tzipori shegelma, that they would weigh with, very precious and heavy stone. That's how his hair was so luscious and rich. Now, lefikach nitla b'sa'arev. Since he was arrogant with his hair, therefore he was hung from his hair. Shlomo says the pasuk in Shmuel Beis. It says v'yikra Avshalom lefnei avdei David. Avshalom called out in front of the servants of David. V'Avshalom reichav al hapered, and Avshalom was riding on the mule. Now, as he's riding on the mule, it comes under the thick, big elm tree. And the gear says, and his head gets grabbed on in the branches of the elm tree. And he was hanging between heaven and earth. And the mule that was beneath him kept on going. And he was stuck in the branches. So he tried to take something sharp. He wanted to cut it off. So Rabbi Shmuel was torn by Rabbi Shmuel, but at that moment, Nivka Sha'ol Matachtav, Gehenim split open beneath him, and he wasn't able to go ahead and do anything to save him. Now, the Gemara tells us that after he died, Avshalom, so the pasuk tells us how did David HaMelech respond. So it says, V'yirgas HaMelech, the king, David, his father, was trembling. V'yal al aliyas hashar, and he went up to the top of the gate. V'yevkin, he cried. V'koyam abalechta, this is what he said when he was going. B'ni Avshalom, my son Avshalom, B'ni Avshalom, my son Avshalom, Mi'itein musi ani tachtecha, who would give that I would die in your place? Avshalom, B'ni, Avshalom, my son. And then it says, V'hamelech lo ates panav, the king wrapped his face. V'yizik hamelech kol gadol, and the king screamed out a great voice. B'ni Avshalom, my son Avshalom, Avshalom, B'ni, Avshalom, my son. Says the Gemara, Hani Tamanya B'ni Lama. He screamed out the word B'ni, my son, 8 times. Why is that? Says Gemara, Shiva de Aski Meshiv Medur Gehenim. 7 of those screams were to get him out of the 7 levels of Gehenim. Vidach, and the 8th one, Ikadame, some say was the Kar of Reish Lagavi Gufe, that his head should be connected to his body because his head was thrown at a distance from his body and it came back together. Vikadame, those that say the Asiyeh La'amad the Asiyeh, they should bring him to the world to come, and that was the 8th time. Thank you to any time for hosting us.